All right. First of all, I'm, as always, apologizing to you, but I want to apologize to our guests because they've been waiting, but they will get to you or you will get to them. And they are our colleagues in the World Food Program who will brief on the launch of WFP's fourth edition of its flagship biannual report, The State of School Feeding Worldwide. The report will be presented by Carmen Borbano, WFP's Director of School Meals and Social Protection, and she will be joined by Professor Donald Bundy, co-editorial lead for the report. They will be joining you remotely from London and Copenhagen. Tomorrow I will have a guest, and that will be Assistant Secretary General Sandra Ojimbo of the UN Global Compact. She will be here in person to brief you in advance on the flagship event, Global Africa Business Initiative, which is taking place on Sunday and Monday, 21st and 22nd at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. This year's Unstoppable Africa event will feature half a dozen heads of state, CEO, investors, creative stars of sports and screen, and will be opened by the Secretary General and the Chairperson of the African Union. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the Israeli military reportedly hit more buildings in Gaza City today. Families gathered in the open after being warned that one of those buildings would be hit. While the Israeli military had instructed them to move south to Khan Younis, OCHA tells us that many of them were unsure of where to go next. Since yesterday, the entire city has been under a blanket displacement order. Issuing displacement orders does not absolve parties to a conflict of their responsibilities to protect civilians in the conduct of their hostilities. Today and yesterday, our colleagues tracking movements of people in Gaza recorded more than 10,000 displacements from northern to southern areas, mostly in the direction of Khan Younis. People are using any means possible to move. As some families flee, many others are unable to do so because of health and safety concerns and the high cost of transportation, as we've been telling you. Today, several primary health centers, outpatient therapeutic feeding programs in Gaza City were forced to suspend operations amid the ongoing strikes. And our colleagues at the UN Population Fund tell us that some 55,000 women are having to navigate pregnancy and childbirth amid what are obviously terrible, perilous, and traumatic conditions. Midwives are continuing to provide care, often under fire and with only the light of a mobile phone. We reiterate once again that under international humanitarian law, civilians and civilian infrastructure must always be protected and should never be a target. Civilian sites must also never be used to shield military operations. Also want to flag that our humanitarian country team in the occupied Palestinian territory, which brings together not only UN agencies, but also more than 200 NGOs, today issued a statement that said that we are witnessing a dangerous escalation in Gaza City, where Israeli forces have stepped up their operations and ordered everyone to move south. The team says that nearly 1 million people are now left with no safe or viable option, either in the north nor in the south. They offer safety. Leaving northern Gaza means paying prohibitive cost of transport, safe passage, and navigating roads that are barely passable, finding a place to sleep either in the open air or in overcrowded displacement sites, and continuing a basic struggle to find food, to find water, medical care, and shelter. The humanitarian country team adds that amidst ongoing Israeli impediments, the current level of humanitarian support is wholly insufficient. Humanitarian access must be expanded and sustained to include direct routes to both the north and the south of the Gaza Strip. Turning to the situation in Eastern Europe, I can tell you that the Secretary General is following with great concern the reports that the Russian military drones entered Poland overnight in violation of Poland's airspace, resulting in damage to residential areas in Poland. The incident, which reportedly took place during another large-scale Russian drone and missile attack on Ukraine, again underlines the regional impact and real risk of expansion of this devastating conflict. There is an urgent need for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire and for a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine, one that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, its independence, its territorial integrity, in line with the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and relevant United Nations resolutions. Turning to Haiti, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, is wrapping up his visit to the country, and today he's in Port-au-Prince, stressing that the country needs urgent support amid immense suffering. Before his scheduled departure today, he visited a center that provides support for women and girls who are survivors of gender-based violence. At the KFAM, the Women's House Support Center, he met with women who survived brutal sexual attacks and lost their families and homes in the violence. The organization, which is supported by UNFPA, is providing essential medical services and psychosocial support. And I think recently we told you of the horrific level of gender-based atrocities going on in Haiti. Yesterday, he visited the Hôpital Universitaire La Paix, which is the only public hospital in Port-au-Prince able to handle complex cases that remains open and accessible to people. The facility has been forced to reduce its services, including maternal care. At a displacement site in the capital where many have sought safety from rising insecurity, Mr. Fletcher listened to people whose lives have been destroyed by brutal violence. Living conditions are extremely difficult, with many families having to move multiple times in search of safety. The Undersecretary General stressed that people there want health care, they want clean water, they want education for their children, and they just want a chance to rebuild their lives. The world must do better for them, Mr. Fletcher said. He also visited a youth center where he met with young people once trapped by violence who are learning new skills. And while there, he also met with many government officials, including the Prime Minister and the President of the Transitional Council, and he also met with humanitarian partners and members of the diplomatic community. Amidst Afghanistan's struggle to recover from the earthquake, I wanted to flag another struggle. Our colleagues at the World Food Programme warned today that the country is facing a rapidly worsening humanitarian crisis in 2025. WFP pointed out that this year has seen the highest spike in acute malnutrition ever recorded, with more than 4.7 million human beings with more than 4.7 children and women in need of urgent treatment. The World Food Programme notes that surging malnutrition is due to drastic cuts in food and nutrition assistance by aid agencies. WFP adds that multiple earthquakes in eastern Afghanistan have added to yet another layer of hardship to families struggling to survive. On the ground, WFP has been reaching families in the hardest hit areas in Kunar province with fortified biscuits and other items. They've also set up storage tents to support the broader humanitarian missions. But the World Food Programme says it has been forced to reduce assistance to a fraction of those in need across Afghanistan. According to the agency, the country has more than 9 million people, 1 in every 4 persons facing acute food insecurity. But with the current resources, the agency can only reach less than 1 million people per month, which does not even cover all those at emergency levels of hunger. WFP also urgently requires $568 million to deliver life-saving food assistance in order to get to Afghanistan's most vulnerable people, to help them survive the harsh winter and sustain other critical support programs within the next 6 months. Turning to a number of humanitarian situations in Africa, starting with Sudan, our humanitarian colleagues warned that from January until this month, a whole 9 months, no aid convoys have been able to reach the besieged cities of El Fasher in North Darfur. The fighting, meanwhile, is intensifying, and our concerns are increasing over the protection of civilians in the regions of Darfur and Kordofan. Our colleagues report that yesterday, artillery fire reportedly struck multiple locations in El Fasher. A day earlier, drones and artillery strikes in the famine-stricken Abu Shouk displacement camp on the outskirts of El Fasher and surrounding neighborhoods reportedly caused civilian casualties. On Sunday, drone strikes in the towns of Kuma, which is about 70 kilometers in the east of El Fasher. Their drone strikes damaged civilian infrastructure. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, in the greater Khartoum area, the greater Khartoum area was also impacted by drone strikes that hit several key civilian sites, including an electricity station, leading to a major power outage in the capital, Khartoum. The aerial assault shattered the relative calm that had been prevailed there since recent months, demonstrating some of the risks that the civilians returning to the areas in large numbers face. These incidents also raise serious concerns about the growing use of drone warfare in populated area, something that we're seeing in many parts of the world. Humanitarian access continues to be severely constrained in the country. Heavy rains have rendered key roads between South and East Darfur states impassable, further cutting off access to West Kordofan. And in Khartoum, the response to a cholera outbreak and increasing returns of displaced people remains hampered by the complex approval procedures and unforeseen costs. Volunteer with mutual aid groups are also facing increasing risks, including arbitrary arrest and abuse. Last month, incidents of violence against volunteer aid workers were reported in Khartoum, East Darfur, and North Darfur states. These attacks on aid workers, as well as bureaucratic barriers, continue to pose severe obstacles to the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those who badly need it. We call once again for the immediate cessation of hostilities, the protection of civilians, unimpeded humanitarian access, and increased international funding to sustain life-saving operations across Sudan. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs are sounding the alarm over a threat of a recent surge in violence impacting civilians in the eastern part of that country. At least 89 people were killed in attacks by armed groups on the evening of September 8th in the territories of Beni and Lubero in North Kivu province. Local authorities report that dozens of people remain missing. According to our partners, at least 140 civilians have been killed in a series of attacks against civilians since mid-August across several villages in Beni and Lubero. Our humanitarian partners on the ground report that these attacks indiscriminately target women, children, and vulnerable communities, forcing people to flee, leaving entire villages and fields abandoned. Since the second half of 2024, attacks have claimed the lives of over 2,000 civilians across Beni and Lubero territories. That's what our partners on the ground are telling OCHA. Bruno Lemarquis, our humanitarian coordinator and resident coordinator in the country, is currently visiting Beni. Yesterday, he met with provincial authorities to discuss the urgent need to enhance the protection of civilians, to review the current state of humanitarian response. As violence continues to surge, Mr. Lemarquis warned that funding cuts are having a devastating impact on our humanitarian response. The $2.5 billion humanitarian response plan is currently 15% funded, with only 377 United States dollars in our bank. And in West Africa, in Burkina Faso, following heavy rains, there our colleagues at OCHA have released $1 million to minimize the impact of the expected floods. The resources come from the Regional Humanitarian Fund for West and Central Africa, and will keep two of our local NGO partners, will help two of our NGO partners provide critical food, shelter, water, sanitation, hygiene assistance to 35,000 people in the region ahead of the forecasted floods. This marks the first time that funds have been released from one of OCHA's regional funds as part of anticipatory action efforts, which reflects close monitoring and cooperation between ourselves, our partners, and the authorities in Burkina Faso. And in Nigeria, Tom Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, has allocated $5 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to try to get ahead of the severe floods forecasted in that country. SURF funding is part of a collective initiative and complements the $2 million allocation from the Nigeria Humanitarian Fund. Partners supported by the two funds will focus on providing food, cash, shelter, and support for some 350,000 people in the northeastern part of the country. You will have seen yesterday we issued a statement on Nepal in which the Secretary General said he was deeply saddened by the loss of life and extended his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims, urging a thorough investigation into the events. The Secretary General urges restraint to avoid further escalation of violence and calls on the authorities to comply with international human rights law, and underscores that protests must take place in a peaceful manner, respecting life and property. He calls for dialogue towards forging a constructive path forward, but we do note that today the situation seems to be calmer. Two more notes, including a quiz. I want to flag a report from UNICEF today, which raises some concerning issues regarding the health of children. The report shows that 1 in 10 children worldwide are living with obesity today. The prevalence of underweight children aged 5 to 19 has declined since 2000 from nearly 13% to 9.2%, while obesity rates have increased from 3% to 9.4% in that same time period. The report blames the ultra-processed and fast foods that are shaping unhealthy food environments. And it gets worse. In 10 years from now, the global economic impact due to interventions to tackle the obesity-related issues is expected to surpass $4 trillion United States dollars every single year. Recommendations in the report include transforming food environments and improving financial access to nutritious diets. One member state paid today. Ready? Over 88% of this country is a rainforest, capturing more carbon than the entire country emits. Nope. Sorry? Nope. I'll give you more hint. Its dense rainforest and low human population density creates an ideal condition for the western lowland gorilla, a critically endangered species. Gabon. We thank our friends in Libreville, and we thank David for a good quiz. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups. Has the Secretary General spoken with the President of Poland or the Emir of Qatar, and does he plan to meet with the Prime Minister of Qatar when he's coming here tomorrow?
Yeah, I have no doubt a meeting will be scheduled. I have no doubt they'll see each other. Phone calls are being lined up, and I'll brief you on those once they happen.
And on Poland?
Nothing to report at this point on Poland. Michelle.
Thank you, Steph. On WFP, there's a report that there might be some discontent with Cindy McCain and the job that she's doing. Has anyone from the US government asked the Secretary General to replace her? Does the Secretary General have any plans?
No, I'm not aware of any contact with the U.S. government on that line. I can tell you that the Secretary General is very grateful for Cindy McCain's work as head of WFP, and he's very proud of the work that she's been doing. Sinan and Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. I'm not sure if you received this question before, but I can still ask, I guess. The U.S. has granted Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara an entry visa to visit the country for the UNGA 80s, and I wonder if Secretary General has any comment on that.
No particular comment, except to say that I think anyone who has business to do in front of the UN should be granted a visa. So we note that his visa was granted.
Just a quick follow-up. We know still he and his group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, still in the terrorist list, and they will be represent their country at UNGA. Isn't that like something a little bit interesting?
What is interesting and not interesting, I leave to you and your colleagues. Abdelhamid.
Well, Israel dropped 9 bombs in the capital city of Sana'a, targeting a medical health facility. Killing 9 people, I think. Are you aware of that? And if you have anything to say?
Yes, I mean, I can tell you that we note with grave concern the continued Israeli airstrikes that took place today, as well as the Houthi attacks that had been targeting Israel. And one of the attacks, the Israeli airstrikes today came very close to a UN facility, which obviously of concern to us. What we want to see is a cessation of all military activities between Israel and the Houthis, and of the avoidance by all to do anything that would escalate tensions in an area where tensions are already pretty highly escalated by any measure. International law must be respected. International humanitarian law, as applicable, must all be respected by parties. And again, I mean, I think since you raised the issue of Yemen, it's always good for us to remind you and the authorities in Yemen that we demand the immediate and unconditional release of all our colleagues who are detained and continue to be detained, as well as staff from national and international NGOs, civil society, and diplomatic missions. These arbitrary detentions must end.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's a question related to U.S. Because it's concern everyone. Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador in Israel, said, "We will not interfere if Israel annex the West Bank." And in a related issue, the Trump administration is threatening Brazil that they could use economic and military power if they put Bolsonaro in trial and not let him go. So any comment on these developments?
Well, I mean, on the issue of the potential annexation of the West Bank, I think the Secretary General and the whole brochette of UN senior officials have been very clear in calling out the devastating impact it would have not only on Palestinian civilians, but also on the prospect of a two-state solution. We trust that the judicial system in Brazil will run its course. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. Has the Secretary General seen a letter sent from Sudan to the Security Council alleging involvement of the United Arab Emirates in that country's conflict and the use of mercenaries, and does he have any response?
Yeah, my understanding is that the letter was received, being circulated as requested by the Security Council. I think on the situation in Sudan, we've repeatedly called for all of Sudan's neighbors and countries further afield to work positively to help the Sudanese people achieve peace and not work in the other direction.
Would you share the letter with us, please?
It'll be a public document. Deji.
First, a quick follow-up on Edie's question. Has Secretary General ever contacted any high-ranking officials in the region in Middle East after the strike in Doha?
As I said, phone calls are being lined up.
Like who? Can we know?
I said as soon as I can share those things with you, I will.
Okay. Another thing is, we know that the Security Council meeting has been postponed to tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Who will be the briefer from the Secretariat?
Assistant Secretary General Chiare will brief on behalf. At least that's what's scheduled for now. Yes, sir. And then we'll go to Alex. No, hold on. I mean, we're still going to round one. Yeah. Then I'll go to the second round.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have a question on the UN Haiti initiative. Is it going to be debated during the high-level week?
Yeah, I mean, the Secretary General will be presenting proposals to the member states.
And the follow-up, if you may, does he have any expectation with regard to these discussions that will take
well,
place?
we hope that member states fully support his proposals. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. I'm wondering if you have any comments on the agreement between IAEA and Iran.
Interesting that you ask. I do have a comment.
Why is it interesting?
No, it's good that you ask. No, I didn't mean interest. Don't. You're right. Not for me to judge what's interesting or not interesting. No, I was just saying. No, we sorry. We welcome the agreement between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the IAEA on the, quote, practical modalities to resume inspections in Iran as a positive step forward. Resuming full cooperation is required by Iran's comprehensive safeguard agreement, and we look forward to the agreement's swift implementation. And I think it's important to highlight the importance of Iran's full cooperation with the IAEA as essential in achieving long-term framework that can ensure Iran's nuclear program remains exclusively peaceful. Thank you. Okay, Abdelhamid, and then we have to go to our guests who have been more than patient.
Yeah, a follow-up from my question yesterday. You said there was no confirmed information about attacking the Gaza City flotilla. Now it's a second strike, and the fire is showing everywhere that the flotilla was attacked. Do you have any?
Yeah, we've seen those reports. They're obviously concerning to us. I mean, people, civilians, should not be subject to these kinds of harassment. Okay, thank you very much.